So for those of you who were here yesterday, when you went to sleep last night, and if you didn't dream of India stack, you were not probably paying attention to the discussion. I think in India, we like to repeat things. In our music also, you repeat the same thing again and again till you do it well, and still the audience remembers what you said. In the next 40-45 minutes with this distinguished panel, I hope to go deeper into these ideas, to explore what's being done, what's working already, what's working well, what's not working very well, what's a work in progress, and what's just an idea which is yet to be properly even examined as a proof of concept. So we'll go into these terms that you heard yesterday, whether it's India stack, India's digital way, digital public infrastructure, the India way, India's digital economy, and so on and so forth. And try to get into understanding of the choices that are being made into technologies, institutional design, regulatory models, and so on and so forth. So let me begin. I promise to go into details, but I'll start with a global question. And I come to you, Dr. Seth, first. You do work on policy planning and research at Ministry of External Affairs. From your perch, you examine global trends in technologies, changes in geopolitics, and so on. So what are the key trends that you see in digital economies, how they are being shaped across the world, and how do you think India's way is different?
Thank you, Suyash, and thank you, Carnegie India. I was recently at a talk somewhere, and after the end of the talk, we were circulated a chit to rate the speakers, and I was very, amused. It says 0 for sedative speakers and 10 for, provocative speakers. So since I'm one of the co-hosts, I can't be a sedative speaker, and since I'm a diplomat and a government functionary, I can also not be provocative. I will try to take a middle path approach, maybe keep you reasonably awake and maybe a little bit more aware about. Let me begin by giving you a context of what policy planning is, what we do in policy planning in various foreign offices. And then I'll trace some of the trends, which we observe. And these trends are basically during my conversation with my counterparts in various other foreign offices. So give you an insight of that. Basically, in policy planning division, what we do is 3 broad things. One of them is called outreach. And that is what we are doing today in collaboration with Carnegie India, in my co-conspirator and partner in crime, Rudra Chaudhary. We have a platform like Global Technology Summit, where there is a discussion on geopolitics of technology. We have Raisina Dialogue, where we talk about broader geostrategy, Indian Ocean Conference, where we talk about India's ocean strategy, and geoeconomics in what you call Asia Economic Dialogue. So these are the platforms we have created. The second part of my job is to convert the ideas which comes up, the dots which we collect. How do we connect them back in my office and create a policy documents, reports, policy memos out of it. And the third part of my job, the policy planning, is actually to talk to my counterparts to get a sense of what are the trends. So let me come to the topic, the question which you have asked. What are the trends which you see, which policy planners see? There are essentially many trends, but I thought I'll focus on 5 of them. And first trend which we see over the last few years is the mainstreaming of digital technology in the geopolitical discourse. When I joined the Foreign Service long back in 2005, the first class in the geopolitics we were taught flags follow the ships, which means that the political relations between countries actually follows the commercial and economic relations between countries. Today's new metaphor is flags follow the chips. Chip signifies technology. Chip signifies data. Chip signifies digital. So there is a mainstreaming of it. There is also in our Ministry of External Affairs, we have created a new division called NEST, New and Emerging Strategic Technologies. We are giving increasing focus on cyber diplomacy. We have been hugely invested in a platform like Global Technology Summit. At this time, we are happening this in Delhi because it's just on the eve of G20 partnership. So there is an increasing, mainstreaming of the concept of digital. The second trend which you observe is called openness. And we have my colleague who is going to talk about open network or digital commerce. Openness is the buzzword, and India has the lead in this. And probably this would give us an opportunity during G20 to project this concept of openness, which is increasingly being in demand in all over the world, especially in the global south. The third trend which we see is called digital sovereignty. This is how do you define sovereignty in a digital world? As yesterday our Dr. Jaishankar, External Affairs Minister, said, the Westphalian model is not the only model. How do we define the boundaries of sovereignty in a digital world? That's the third trend. So that is there. And then there is increasing interdependence. The fourth trend is interdependence. Earlier, the interdependence was between companies, corporate worlds, platforms. Today, there is increasing interdependence between countries. So they have to talk to each other. They have to find out ways of interoperability, whether it is a UPI getting interoperable with other payment systems and so on. So that is about interdependence. And the last one, quickly, the fifth one is the power shift. Today, there are big tech, some of the representatives of the big techs are here in their India offices and so on. You are also there on my co-panelists. They had economic power at some point, but today some of the platforms have political power. This migration of power dynamics is another important digital trend which is we are observing all over the world. So to just recap, we have a platform called MOSIP, Modular Open Source Identity Platform. I have given you the new MOSIP. It is mainstreaming, openness, then we have sovereignty issues, digital sovereignty, interdependence or interoperability, and power shift. If you remember this MOSIP, you will get these 5 trends, and there are many more trends which are sub-trends, and I think my co-panelists would be able to talk about this in more details. I thank you once again.
But I just want to push you a little bit on this, because to stick to the topic, you were saying these are trends. These are global trends, right? What's different about what India is doing? What's India's digital way? What's different about what India is doing to the digital economy? That's the question. So if you want to further build and identify, perhaps following these trends itself, what is India's stance on these?
What is India's game plan? Is it the question which one? What is India's tech game plan? Okay, since you are talking about game plans and games and so on, let me bring your attention to 2 types of, I think, toys or games which kids play at homes. There is a game called Jenga, where people stack one of blocks, and then what happens is the game begins. Everybody starts pulling one block at a time until everything collapses. India is not playing Jenga. India is playing another game called Lego. We are building blocks. We are building digital blocks. And these digital blocks, when you rearrange them, reconfigure them, they are going to tell their own India's digital story. We have digital identity platform, Aadhaar. We have unique payment interface. We have something called data empowerment and protection architecture. We have account aggregators. We have ONDC. Each of them are individual rivulets or streams, digital streams, which are moving together somewhere where there will be a confluence and create an ocean of digital opportunities for India. And we are not going to have this opportunity within the India. We are also going to share these opportunities with our partners, not just in developing countries, but also in developed world as well. This is our game plan. Thank you.
Now I come to you, Mr. Sharma. Just building on what Dr. Seth said in terms of India's approach to the digital economy, especially the public infrastructure that we're building. So yesterday we heard a lot about India's stack, the identity layer, the payment layer, and the layers on top of it, data exchanges, DEPA framework, which enables it. So can you give us, as of now, which of these layers are actually fully functional and working? And what is the model for those? And which of these are actually just, as of now, works in progress, early days? Just give us a status of where we are on this.
Okay. So, iSpirit will be 10 years old in 67 days, right? So if I go back to 10 years ago, Nandan and R.S. Sharma, both of them have been here on this stage. They had about 300 million people already on Aadhaar. That's gone on to become very successful. So the idea was that, Aadhaar will help us with the flow of people. Can we solve for flow of money and flow of information and build something on top of it, which I'll come to in a minute. So the flow of money has already happened, right? We know UPI, the numbers. Flow of information is also going well within the financial sector. because all the FSDC is the collection of Indian regulators. They came together and issued something called the account aggregator based on a platform called DEPA. We didn't have to wait for the law because effectively the financial regulators laid down the law for their regulated entities. And that was launched in September 2nd of last year. And since then, it's crossed millions of consent. It is growing at a very, very small rate of 60% month on month. 1.1 billion bank accounts are connected to it. So we can certainly see that has become a reality in the financial space. And there's a wonderful new bill that has come. It's not perfect. There are some, things have to be improved. But by and large, when it comes to in-country data flows, it's very, very helpful. And that will then allow for this to become multi-sectoral in nature. So this is one. Now, if you look at these three, if you go back and say, how many countries in the world have made this transition from, let's say, a physical identity to a digital identity at the scale that India has done, from physical money to digital money and to data sharing based on consented flows, which Europeans introduced with GDPR as a norm in a way that is auditable, protected, and managed well. How many countries have done all the three? The answer is nobody else other than India. Not even Estonia. So now there's nobody else. Now, if you fast forward and look back, if you were on this stage 10 years later, how many of the top 50 countries would have done it? I am willing to bet all 50 would have done it. Because this is like when we were in early 90s, in Scandinavia, because mobile telephony had taken over, it was clear to the rest of the world that they will have mobile telephony. Now, of course, some countries took longer, some took less, some did CDMA, some did GSM. There are many approaches to this, but there is little or no doubt that 50 countries will have flow of money, people, and information through the system. Now, how many of them are doing it? We'll come to that a little later. MOSEP alone is covering 350 million people, of which 74.5 million are on board. You can check on a dashboard if you go to mosep.io. So, and there are 16 countries more in the queue. So, MOSEP alone will go to 1 billion people in the next 2-3 years, right? So, this is going to happen more quickly than we can imagine. But why are we doing it? We are doing it because there are three benefits that come. One is the benefit of inclusion. This is very important to Global South, and therefore it'll be picked up by them. Then the second benefit is it helps you revamp government services. We know about vaccination, we know about DBT. That's important to many people. Third, which is where Rahul comes in, is that we can reimagine market ecosystems based on this infrastructure that we have. So there are several open network projects that are on. The one that's most in the news is Open Network for Digital Commerce, but there's Open Network for Credit called OCEN. There's Open Network for Health, Open Health Services Network also called UHI, and more. So we are doing many open networks. They're not proven yet. But I am very confident that a year or so from now, many of them will be proven. So then what will happen is people will have the benefit of looking at the India experience and replicating it as they go forward. And I'll finish with this. So there is a playbook in the last 10 years that has emerged for being able to do it for India. The principles of the playbook are applicable to other countries, but the playbook to do it not for India but for the world is actually very different. And we will come back and talk about this because it needs different things, and we should talk about it in a later go-around.
Just to follow up on this, so as you said, the identity, the Aadhaar piece is almost done. It's almost universal now. UPI is now not universal, but there are 250, 260 million users already. And pretty much anybody with a smartphone can use it. It's very convenient. And then we are building on top of those. So I want to take a couple of examples and try to understand the design philosophy and principles, what's driving it. So account aggregator, right? The idea is to have open financial information exchange. And basically you've said that you have control over your own data, and you can basically ask any financial institution or even other kind of tax-related information to be put on the aggregator, and then it can share with any third party. Now, when I look at open banking initiatives elsewhere, they are driven by competition concerns. So some countries did open banking, but applied only in large banks and said, okay, smaller banks will not get into. But it's not just a question of consumer owning the data. The banks also have a commercial interest. They've created this information over a long period of time. What is the philosophy driving this? Because when we did last year, they said every public sector bank has to share, even the small ones have to share information on the account aggregator by mandate. Similarly, on UPI, we mandated zero charge, we mandated providing UPI in all merchant establishment above a certain rate. So is this something which is being done purely because these innovations are themselves very interesting? I'm a user of UPI, but where is the innovation ending and where is the state coercion starting?
So, I have the luxury to balance Sumit out, because I can afford to be provocative. So, look, when UPI was coming out, in February, I remember the date, February 11, 2015, when the then governor of RBI, Raghuram Rajan, announced it. He said this will be a payment system that will be a public utility. At that time, Visa, MasterCard, WeChat Pay, Alipay were none of them were public utilities. They're not even public utilities today. But in India, a conscious decision had been taken that payments would be a public utility. Because therefore, what does a public utility operated by private parties mean? It means that you have capped profits. That's the difference between a public utility and a non-public utility. The benefit of having capped profits here is that utility is so important that it actually unleashes innovation in the economy, in other parts of the economy. And that is where private innovation can really capture profit pools and make value by solving other problems that are there. Now, this was a completely radical idea at that time, but it is no longer radical because it's been very successful. Now, when it comes to data sharing, personal data sharing, the same idea that it has to be a public utility. Now, why? Because it unlocks a lot of innovation on top of it as we go forward. So, finishing that thought, there are some central principles that are driving this experiment of India. Very eloquently was brought out is openness, the Lego nature of this, right? But there are some other principles. The other principle is that, look, we are saying that it will be techno-legal in nature. In other words, to shape the behavior of market participants, we will not simply use public policy, but we will also use public technology. So it is the combination of public technology and public policy that allow us to do that, which is what ONDC is doing. ONDC is using public technology and public policy to unleash innovation in the marketplace so that India's problems can be solved at scale. Rahul, am I describing your thing reasonably okay? So he's got to give me a treat after this. So you get the idea that I'm talking about. So similarly, there are a bunch of these principles. These principles will travel to all other countries because they can look at India's experience, how they travel. And what does it mean for it to travel is something that we have to sort out as we go forward.
We'll come back to this question again in the next round because we do put tolls on roads as well, and roads also enable broader economic activity. But here we are not doing that. Rahul, I come to you next. ONDC is a relatively new kid on this block, and it's a very promising one because digital identities are being done in other countries, and if not digital, other forms of identities are being done. Yesterday, we had a closer roundtable on real-time payment systems. 70 countries are doing real-time payment systems at varying level of success. But ONDC is truly unique. At least as far as my knowledge goes, there's nothing like ONDC that at least we have seen. It's a unique, innovative approach to doing e-commerce. Can you just explain to us what ONDC is first? And then perhaps the recent pilots that you've conducted, what's been the key learnings? If you can just take a couple of minutes to explain what's going on in ONDC.
Sure. And thank you, sir. I think you've been way more eloquent than most other people I know. Right? So if you look at the way that ONDC is set up, right? Firstly, a couple of taking up from what Mr. Sharma was just talking about. Absolutely. We are a private company. We are a Section 8 company set up to do public good. We're a non-profit organization, which means that we get money from a lot of different people and we don't have to give dividends. And we're not in for profit maximization. Now, that being said, what we're trying to do is democratize out commerce. So from that end, we had some kind of a precursor, right? We looked at and said, there has been UPI, which has already done the defragmentation, democratization of finance. So it is easier for us to follow in that because we can now turn around and say, we as ONDC are the UPI for commerce. Right? So we have something to follow on. But that being said, it becomes that much more difficult for us also because where UPI for all practical purposes has an SKU of 1, right? I mean, it's money flow. Our job is a little bit more complicated because there is a material flow of a particular product and associated to it are returns and replacements and all of those fun things. But also associated to that, we have that SKU of 1 coming back. All right. Now, what is ONDC? ONDC is actually driven from a very clear-cut perspective of saying that we are interoperable and unbundled. So if you look at the standard way that a particular platform works, a platform is where, and there are enough platforms, and all of us have grown up with that platform idea, right? It is very, very difficult for a lot of us to actually think beyond that also. So please bear with me. Now, in this case, if you literally just take your left hand and your right hand, put it together as like a namaste, what you'll realize is that is actually a platform. Because the left side of it is for all practical purposes where you as the buyer are coming to and putting in your search request. And it literally, because it is a very interlocked, tight unit, it goes over to your right hand side, which is where they have also onboarded all of the sellers. And whether it is any consumer electronics or any other store or so, they are already on the right hand side. So you put in your request on the left side, it goes over to the right side, they fill up all of the cart with whatever is shown to you, and that's what you as a customer choose. Now, as a customer, the first problem that you have at the back of your mind is, are the products that are being shown to me right for me, or are they right for the platform? The other side to it that comes up is that from a seller side, right? Now, for you to be discoverable and to you to try and maximize your sale, you need to be on various platforms. Which also means that the overhead on you to manage all of your inventory and your catalogs is massive, right? One platform might decide to call red as fiery red, and the other one might decide to call it deep red, and you have to maintain all of those different components to it. Similarly speaking, as a seller, you don't have the option of managing your margins because those are defined by the platform. Same condition is your terms and conditions. And also, major other component to it is disintermediation risk, right? I mean, if your product starts selling really well, you have no idea whether the platform will tomorrow just turn it around and white label it and start selling your product out also. Now, what we do at ONDC is, firstly, we are not here as any component to try and kill a platform or to limit a platform, okay? We are here as people who are going to try and expand the market. So, effectively, I'm sure this august group already knows that less than 6% or about 6% of total Indians are actually transacting online, not taking financial transactions into consideration. But if I look at the total number of people following through on e-commerce, it's about 6%. Our intent is to go down to 75% of India. Now, what that means is that a customer can come in from any side, whether it is which means that you're coming in from a buyer application, which can be like a Vodafone app, or it can be a banking app like a Kotak or an IDFC or a Paytm application. And when you send in that request, it goes to the ONDC cloud or to the ONDC gateway. And from there, it is sent out to various seller side applications, right? No longer is that linked up, but it's unbundled out. And it's being sent to various seller side. All of those results are now showcased to the customer. So now the customer is able to make a better decision because now you have probably more choices on what you actually want to buy. And now on the seller side, If you are, let's say, Gupta Kirana store is the standard response that we also sometimes tend to give. Now, no longer has to be on various seller applications. Okay? All you're doing is being on one of them, and you're now visible and discoverable across the entire network. So from an inclusion perspective also, what we were just talking about, it actually allows so many more people to be discoverable, and for so many more people to be able to transact online. Okay? That in a nutshell is what is ONDC. Now, where Mr. Sharma was also talking about, and so you also alluded to, is that what we're doing is something that has never been done before. So we don't have the option of going and reading something and saying, hey, it was done there. Maybe we can follow through on that. Right? So we are actually having to design out and define out things as simple as how will payments and settlements actually work in this distributed fashion? How will issues and grievances be managed? Okay? Those kind of things are also things we are working on. And we've got documents out in the public domain where people are already starting to work on that too. So there is a large amount of work that is being done. And I can actually carry on this for a long, long time. Did I answer all your questions, or did I miss something?
Yes, we can come back to the question on the pilots perhaps a little bit later, but I want to come to Dr. Srivathsa. Dr. Srivathsa, Microsoft signed on to ONDC a couple of months ago this year. What was the thought process behind signing up, becoming a member of the ONDC? And if you can take that example and kind of extrapolate in the broader kind of question about how does Microsoft and the company see these kind of open networks, and what are the opportunities, and in what way do you think they could perhaps threaten your own business models? So how do you see this kind of India's approach to digital economy and Microsoft's place in it?
Yeah, so thank you so much. Look, just a step back in terms of ONDC itself. As an open system, as a network, open ecosystem, it's very, very innovative. We want to support it. And the broader thematic I would draw is that we are overall supportive and in fact consider open systems as a key fulcrum for our growth. Let me explain what I mean by that. As an organization, as a technology company that's been around for some time, we've been through ups and downs of our own and have learned along the way. 2014 is the year that we embraced open source, when Satya said, Microsoft loves Linux. Since 2014 to now, we are, if not the largest, one of the largest contributors to the open source community. And that's across the stack, whether it is the infra layer, data layer, application layer, whichever layer or presentation layer. The reason is that we believe that that is the way in which innovation happens at scale. And we have internally more than 5,000 engineers in the organization that are contributing to open source. And of course, with GitHub, that is a very open, the largest platform for open source. That is a very strong statement from Microsoft's side that for us, open networks and open systems are a fundamental way of doing business. Let me explain why that is the case. That goes back to our business model. If you look at our business model and our mission also, it says empowering every person and every organization on the planet, which means that we are there to help startups and organizations and governments and educational institutes innovate faster, with agility, with as least friction as possible. That goes back to, as a platform provider, that our role is to unbundle technological innovations and provide them on the platform in a way that people can leverage and build products quickly. So for example, think of the newest language model in AI. While that language model, that AI innovation might go into Microsoft's first-party products, it's on the platform as an API for a developer to use and leverage and create a language-based application, even if the person is not a data science or machine learning expert, is an IT developer, right? That's what platforms do. Platforms take innovations, divide them into building blocks, and make the building blocks available for others to leverage, to build quickly on. So therefore, it is fundamentally aligned to our business. And the last thing I would say is, as we look at open systems, and we'll talk more about it, the fundamental element of trust, it's kind of an unwritten tattoo on my forehead. Microsoft runs on trust. And it is not just a word trust. You've got to unbundle it. If you unpack it, there are several thematics that are very specifically inside it. Cybersecurity, privacy, compliance, transparency. Because our ability to go to our customers and say, your data belongs to you. Your data is not something that we monetize on. We keep it cyber secure, encrypted. All of those things are very, very serious in the way we show up in the market to be a trusted platform. So for us to be trusted, available for economy's growth, and India, the growth, the independent variable is the large, small and medium businesses. If you want to be relevant to India, we are there to make sure that those open ecosystems thrive.
So specifically, what is the role that you see in terms of helping ONDC develop and grow? Like, what are the specific roles that Microsoft is planning to play in this?
So ONDC is new. We will evolve as we go. At the end of the day, we have a lot of cognitive services, etc., that people will build on. But if I go back to some of the other examples that Sharad was talking about regarding, data, and you've been hearing since yesterday about the NLTM and Bhashini, many of our research folks are very deeply engaged in solving issues behind some of these frameworks and really being part of the technical solutioning behind these. The whole language work that's happening that you've heard Bhashini, behind that the AI for Bharat work, many of our folks are deeply engaged. That's at the fundamental technology level, right? But for example, when you go to the let's say the account aggregator world, and you look at the startups in the fintechs, we are working with many of them to help them understand what the account aggregators will mean for that ecosystem and how they need to look at the data to innovate. So our role, because of the breadth of things we operated, it's at the technical level, at the research level, at the banks level, who are looking at becoming financial information providers, but need to innovate. Some of them are moving forward because they are the early movers, not all banks are. But the financial information users are all the fintechs and startups. They are data first, they are AI first. So we are going out there telling them, look, this is the way the fintech revolution is going to happen. Innovate.
So until recently, the richest person in the world was somebody who's in e-commerce primarily. And you've building a network of networks, if I can describe it this way, which is actually a non-profit. And you've still been able to attract a number of professionals who are engaged in building that. And so what is the motivation? So for example, why did you join ONDC in the first place? Why did others in your colleague? What is the motivation? What is the incentive that's driving you? What are you hoping to achieve in terms of, and because for there may be insight on how to replicate this also perhaps elsewhere. What is the model?
Interesting question, right? A lot of us actually inside of ONDC have come from the private space, right? So as we were talking to somebody else and he said, I've come in from the dark side. So we also come in from the dark side. But the idea basically was that we had the intention of seeing, well, firstly, there is a vision that was there and it drove us. The second thing was that you can do something, and if you're coming in, so for example, I was an entrepreneur before this and working on the health tech side to it. And the idea was, you make some money out there and you walk off into the sun. Right? But then, and Koshi's actually given us all a book also, which is, I've forgotten the name of it. But the foreword of that book literally started off with the idea saying that you can do something and and walk off into the sun kind of thing, or you can actually develop something which will leave a legacy behind. So for all practical purposes, those were the two major things, right? I mean, to leave a legacy behind and frankly speaking, to do something which is really fun. Because think about it, right? Considering that we're doing something that has never been done before, has not even been conceived of. There is that thrill of trying to create the payment solutions and all. And also, very, very importantly, something that maybe you were a little shy on saying, but I'll say so, right? There have been working with different sets of organizations in the same room to work towards public good. I can actually tell you that we've been, so when we were working on defining out how payments and solutions and then the settlements would work, we had about 15 banks in the same room trying to hash out how we should get down to having nodal accounts and how would the recon service provider work. Okay? From when we were trying to define out how issues and grievances would work, we had a bunch of ODR providers in the room. Technically, everybody's a competitor, but everybody was in that room. When we were working on trying to define out how the ONDC score would work, right, which is how well are you been working on, we actually had people from Microsoft, from Google, etc., in the room hashing it out with us and saying, yes, this is a good idea. And nobody was actually working on the idea saying that what's in it for me. That was the best part of it. In the last 6-8 months have been exactly that. It's been, what can we do to build something that is better than there has ever been before?
Yeah, that's a great answer and very sincere also, because we've seen this story also play out and how these professionals have joined Koshi, how he decided to leave the private sector, come in. I want to build
if I
on
just
this.
Add just the point that you made, Rahul, right? Because the things that have been happening in India are so unique. They are of such a different magnitude and such a different complexity that people are drawn to work on them. I mean, after all, techies are people who want to work on the next big challenging thing. So people want to work on them and contribute.
Yeah, in fact, so much of our digital public infrastructure has been built by volunteers. So even when UIDI was starting and Aadhaar was being built, some of the best minds in computing and related fields joined that government organization at relatively low salaries. And iSpirit is a place where a lot of this has happened and it's been built on volunteerism, and it's been almost a decade now. So, and these are sectors with high-powered incentives, like payments, e-commerce, where actually billions are to be made. And still for year after year, we've sustained these initiatives by just volunteer effort, through non-profits and all of that. So can you also build on this and see, I mean, if there's more to be added to this idea of doing this as a public good?
See, I want to dampen this down a little bit. I first of all, see, I'm a technologist. I can tell you public technology is what drives the world today. You mentioned Linux, right? Before that, face recognition is a public technology. Cryptography is public research. Only thing that has happened is in this world of public technology, India has also arrived. First of all, let's put this in perspective. So, and everything that we do, right from messaging, SMTP, TCP/IP, the fact that we have a phone call on session initiation protocol, HTML, which is what we use for internet, these are all damn public technologies. In fact, all of them are built by volunteers. So all that has happened is India is now also a player in this. And why is it an important player? Because those people who are volunteers sitting in the US don't know India's problems. So therefore, if we have to solve India's problems in Bharat, we need Indian techies to understand those problems to build public technology for that. So first, let us be very clear, we are not doing anything path-breaking. The public technology has been built for the last 30, 40 years. We are now one more player in the game. Now the question is, our public technology works on the ground. ONDC hopefully will work on the ground. He is very confident it will. But confidence, if only intentions were the basis for this, India would be a superpower. So the question is not intentions. The question is, can you make it work on the ground? That has a lot of blood and tears that takes to make that happen on a repeatable basis. Now, I think we have learned how to do that. It is starting to happen. The question is that once you build public technology that works in India, can it be relevant to other parts of the world? And therefore, in our spirit of our view of the world is that we believe that the world is one family, right? And therefore, we feel obliged to give our Indian public goods as global public goods. So now if we have to do that, we have to think differently about how we build public goods. Because when we build public goods, we inherently assume that we align with the value system of the country that we live in. We don't have to work hard to do that, because that is we've been living here to do that. But if you want this to work in Africa, we need to make sure it is aligned with the value system of Africa. Right? So that becomes very important. So you have to make the values manifest. If you wanted to travel, you have to make standards manifest. If you wanted to go, you got to make trust manifest. You mentioned trust, right? India is actively and rightly so telling its startups, please don't build it on GPS, because if you happen to be on the wrong side of the US will weaponize GPS and our economy will shut down. So build this on Navic, which is the reason that an Indian public good that is government owned will not travel anywhere else. Our EVMs are wonderful and not a single other country uses it. So we got to build institutional structures that will create trust in foreign companies so that Indian government cannot shut it down and weaponize it. That's what MOSIP is about, right? It requires us to think very deeply then about how the funding will happen. How will we help them with policy making that is there, even though we are giving them public technology? So look, I know we are in a rara moment for this, and I am happiest person for that, because, this is the real work of iSpirit volunteers that is coming to the fore. But I want us to be realistic, because the only reason we will not travel is we will have hubris. We will forget to be humble. We will stop learning. And then we will over-promise, under-deliver, and disenchantment will come in. A self-goal looms in front of us if we don't remain humble and have hubris and avoid hubris. And so that's really what I would say. The playbook for building for world is different than the playbook for building for India. And we have to invest time and effort to understand those differences. And we'll have to unlearn some things and learn new ones. If this vision that we have been articulating over the last few days, which is not built just for India, but built for the world, has to also become a reality 10 years from now. And that is what I leave it with.
Yeah, I think that's a very important point. And I will just add one more risk to that, is that risk of getting nationalized. That if it works, government would say, it's mine and I want to now take over and take it to the world.
I don't work for the government, so I can be provocative. Sumit gave me the permission to do that, right? So, see, in India, if you want public tech to have scale, the best way to invest trust in it is to make it government tech. The worst way to actually have scale outside India is to make it government tech. Yeah. This is not just true for India, it's true for the US, right? Everything that I cited to you, SMTP, etc., if any one of them was government tech, it wouldn't have traveled all over the world. So India has this challenge before it to create fiercely Indian, non-governmental institutions that are respected in the world. We've never done it before. We've only done one so far, and that is MOSIP. Can we do 10 more in the next 10 years? I think we can. But that requires us to be humble. That requires us to be very grounded. Then only will it happen as we go forward.
Yeah, I want to come to Dr. Seth with the same thread, take it forward. Yesterday, Ambassador Ashraf was here, and he said that he actually made a similar point in many ways, that there are different ways to take things to the world, and you need to find the way that the world will trust you. And one way is to do standard setting, which is collaborative and consultative and open, basically. And don't make it about you exporting something, but it's something which is of global interest. It becomes like a global forum of Center for Excellence or something like that. And then everybody contributes to it. It's not a thing about India only. India can take a lead in that, but it will not be the owner of it, so to speak. So do you think that something like that is possible if you want to, especially the ideas that are working already, and there is some sense that we know the principles broadly, they will travel differently to different parts of the world. They're trying to solve different problems. The value systems are different perhaps. But what could be the way to, think about this?
First of all, I must tell you that this is the advantage of platforms like Global Technology Summit, where you are able to listen to provocative, thought-provoking ideas. When I go back on my desk in my office, these are the things which have stimulated my neurons, helps me write those policy memos, which helps my senior leadership to take decisions on that. we have to, as you say, charity begins at home. That's a cliche, and we need to first work towards consolidating the gains we have achieved. And it is the demonstration effect which will actually persuade. I think persuasion is more powerful than force, So it will persuade people to accept, because there is, let's put ourselves in their shoes. If a foreign successful platform, digital platform comes to my country, what is the first reaction that country will have? What are the strings attached here? What could be the risks? Whether my data will go all the way to that country from where this platform has come. We have to assuage these concerns. That's why all our missions, embassies and posts abroad, one of the mandates for them is, so there are three big mandates: is trade, tourism, and technology. So technology is not just bringing technology in, but also what technology we have developed to educate people about the benefits of this on a daily basis. It's a daily, day-to-day work which will have a summation effect in coming years. For many years, probably you will not see any effect. But then we'll have to wait, and diplomacy is a game of patience. It is not an instant T20 thing. It's a test match. It's a marathon. Sometimes you have to bite for the last lap. That is what we are. And as a diplomat, I am eternally optimistic that we will be able to showcase. We believe in this yoga model of giving technology to the world. We never nationalized yoga. We give it to the world. We make it International Day of Yoga. So today, if you ask anyone in the world the benefits of yoga, they know how it comes from India. They never put an IPR or a patent on yoga. Similarly, we are not putting a patent on IPR on the technologies which we are. We are first going to demonstrate to them the benefits. Our common people will be the ambassador of these technologies. They are the one who will showcase, look, it is because of them, the life change which has happened to, as they call Antodaya, through technology. That is going to happen in coming years. I think that is the spirit with which we are working together.
I'll build on what Sumit is saying, because Sumit is making a very subtle but very powerful point. Who owns yoga? I will say the yogis own yoga. Ayush Ministry does not think it owns yoga. Alo Yoga or any of those yoga chains they may claim they own yoga, but we all know they don't own yoga. Is that true? Right? So it's the yogis that own. India is one of the places where this is universally understood. So when we are talking about public technology, those volunteers are the yogis that build that public technology. And I think because we think of it like that, our government has the wisdom to say we don't own yoga. Ayush Ministry does not claim we own yoga. Is that right, Sumit? Right? So therefore, this is something which is deeply culturally embraced. But when you take it to another country, you can't assume this thinking will percolate there as well. So therefore, we have to become aware of our own thinking and figure out a way to take it to other places. I don't worry about the volunteer part, because the same yogis that own the yoga and continue to make it special are the yogis that are building the public tech in India. They're not going to go away. There is a several millennial long tradition for us to build our cultural artifacts as public goods. You go to London Museum, you have this plaque. They can't say this is the best collection of Indian art. So what do they say instead? They say this is the largest collection of copyleft art. And that is true. So India has a millennial long culture of doing this. We are just happening to do it for public tech. We are doing it with enormous shraddha, and therefore the quality is good, and therefore it works on the ground, and therefore it is useful to other parts of the world.
So, Dr. Srivathsa, I give you the last word on this. Maybe if you can build on the same thread that has been running for the last 10 minutes. And because Microsoft is a global corporation, works in many jurisdictions, and the main way in which today such ideas travel is when large corporations take their capital, invest in another country, and then build businesses there. But this is a different approach, right? And how would you say it's going to go global?
I think it is a very, very innovative and exciting journey. One thing which we have seen, having worked in more than 190 countries, that it's less about technology, it's more about empowering the people, and which also involves understanding their cultural context, their use case context, the trust element we've talked about. So for us, the ability to operate in all of these countries and help the local entrepreneurs build technology is only possible when we just provide the building blocks and say, here, take your imagination and build what works for you as the solutions, right? So for us, it is very innovative to think that India is thinking about our public goods becoming relevant, very supportive, and obviously it's a long journey. But from just the philosophy and thinking about how we make technology work for the world, it's deeply aligned and is something that we would like to support.
Thank you. On this note, I would like to end this discussion. The screen is all red. Our next guest is here.
Few extra seconds to make up. This is a opportunity as a co-host from Ministry of External Affairs to thank the Carnegie India team. They have been working tireless for months. And, I think since I have a mic, I should, utilize it to thank all of you sincerely from the bottom of our heart. It is all the good things you are seeing is they are doing. And if there are some deficiencies, please look at me. I would like to, work towards improving this platform better next year also. Thank you once again. Sorry for taking away the floor.
Yeah.